Everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Do want to switch gears, and so here's the deal. As I've said many times, this time of year, the transfer portal moves very, 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 very fast. On Monday's Aaron Torres pod, which dropped, very early in the morning, we talked about some of the weekend news and notes, LJ Cryer, Tremont Mark, Caleb Love, etc. I bring it up to say that just since that episode dropped, a lot of new stuff has happened on Monday into Monday evening. And so last week I kind of joked about, hey, we're just going to do a daily portal news and notes update. But until further notice, until this news dies down, we're just going to do a daily portal news and notes update. And so what I want to do is hit on some of the big movement from Monday, some of the stuff I missed on Monday's Aaron Torres pod. We'll start with some news about some schools that are reaching out to certain guys, some new names in the portal. And Monday was actually a very big day from a commitment perspective. So let's break it all down. Let's start. I actually think the biggest piece of news came with a player who was already in the portal, but has not yet committed. The kid is named Harrison Ingram. In my transfer portal rankings last week, he was one of the top 5-6 players that I deemed to be in the portal. For people who don't know much about his background, about a 6'8" kid, McDonald's All-American, played the last 2 years at Stanford, and kind of an interesting trajectory. Had a great freshman year at Stanford, was phenomenal, seriously considered leaving for the NBA. Decides to come back for a sophomore year, and unfortunately, it just didn't click. Stanford struggled. Harrison Ingram, his stats didn't really develop the way that he thought they would, or that any of us thought they would that love college basketball. And so over the last couple of weeks, he has decided to hit the transfer portal. And as I said, I think he's an NBA caliber player in the portal who is certainly drawing plenty of interest from plenty of big spots. Why am I bringing it up? Why is it interesting? Well, as soon as he hit the portal, he heard from North Carolina, and actually heard from them quite a bit, like once or twice in the first 24 to 48 hours. North Carolina had reached out multiple times. But I bring it up because on Monday, it became an official blue blood battle royale as Joe Tipton from On3 Sports, he does great work, reported that both Kentucky and Kansas have now joined the fray and have reached out to Harrison Ingram, again, a 6'7", 6'8" wing from Stanford. Now, in terms of the shock factor with this news, I would put it at like a 0.0001, okay? From the North Carolina perspective, the fact that they are pursuing him so aggressively, not surprising at all. Very talented player, and he fits a position of need for North Carolina. North Carolina, listen, we could all talk about and debate what happened last year, but they're going to bring back RJ Davis at point guard. They got a nice 5-star guard coming in, Simeon Wilcher. They may bring in Ian Jackson, 5-star guard as well. Armando Bacot's back in the front court. But what they really need is a wing and wing scoring, something that they severely lack right now with this current team, and really just didn't have a great balance of throughout this past season. Now, they did get a commitment from Brown transfer Paxton Wojcik a few weeks ago, but he's more of a sharpshooting type kid more than he is like a bucket getter. Just give me the ball and get out of the way. And so it's not surprising. Listen, North Carolina, again, we can criticize this past season, but they are going to always have NBA level talent. And Harrison Ingram feels like the missing piece for what would once again be a very good team going into next year. Understand that this year didn't go as planned, but if North Carolina adds Harrison Ingram to RJ Davis, to the recruiting class, to Armando Bacot, to Paxton Wojcik, that's all of a sudden looking like a team that can compete at the top of the ACC. What's also not surprising is the other two schools that I just mentioned reaching out. The Kansas, not surprising. Let me explain why. Harrison Ingram is originally from Dallas. Dallas is sort of in that Big 12-ish footprint. Kansas, obviously, in the Big 12. And Kansas has had a ton of success recruiting Dallas area players, including most notably an All-American this year named Jalen Wilson. Kind of the same player as Harrison Ingram. So how about that? Dallas kid Harrison Ingram being recruited to replace Dallas All-American Jalen Wilson. Also, plenty of other Dallas guys have gone through Kansas over the years. Oh, I can't think of all of them off the top of my head. I think Marcus Garrett was one, but that's always been a hotbed for Kansas. Kansas is huge in Dallas, so I'm not surprised that Kansas is going after him. I will say, I am a tiny bit surprised from the Kentucky perspective. Now, listen, I criticized Kentucky last week. Kentucky fans got mad. I'm not going to criticize them for reaching out to one of the best players in the portal. But what stands out to me about the Kentucky perspective is they already have a really good wing coming in Justin Edwards. Now, listen, if you can accumulate talent, you go ahead and do it. And obviously, one thing that was a problem this year for Kentucky was depth. And so because of it, yeah, you add bodies and you stack bodies and you put together the best team as possible. But with that said, Justin Edwards, as good as Justin Edwards is, I don't know if that limits the possibility of Harrison Ingram going there. But it's an interesting development nonetheless. My hunch is that it does feel like this one's probably going to come down to Kansas versus North Carolina. I'm sure others are trying to get in the mix. Again, him being from the Big 12 footprint in Dallas, I'm sure Texas is going to make a phone call. I'm sure some of the other Texas schools, Baylor, et cetera, probably will as well. In the end, my guess would be, if I had to take a guess right now, and it's just an educated guess, no super inside information, I think it's going to be a North Carolina-Kansas thing. Either one would be a great fit. Again, NBA talent, and it'd be fascinating to see what happens there. Speaking of Texas, just mentioned it a minute ago, Monday was a little bit of a quiet day in terms of players entering the transfer portal that had not already been in. Now, I think we're still going to get a couple big names here over the next couple weeks, but Monday was a little bit quiet from the entrance perspective. A couple guys exited, we'll talk about in a minute. The only real notable name that stands out to me that entered the portal on Monday was Arterio Morris, former McDonald's All-American who played this last season at Texas. Now, he's kind of an interesting story. Former five-star kid, McDonald's All-American. I will say it is worth noting, did get into a little bit of legal trouble that didn't slow him down at all during his time at Texas. But, 6'3" guard, originally from Dallas again. This was a very talented player who, to be blunt, I think he just got lost in the numbers game at Texas. When he's being recruited, I don't think anybody really thought Marcus Carr would be back. They add Tyrese Hunter in the offseason, and they should. Those are two really good college guards. And so Arterio Morris kind of got lost in the shuffle, averaged 5 points, about a rebound and a half per game, but he is still an elite upper-level talent, and now he decides to enter the portal. In terms of where he could land, I think it's probably a little bit early to project too much, but what I would say is a couple things that stand out. One, he did originally commit to Memphis out of high school. Now, Memphis is kind of loading up in the portal themselves. They added Caleb Mills over the weekend from Florida State, added Jonathan Pierre, a Division II All-American, over the weekend as well. They added another kid from Middle Tennessee, I should mention as well. So Memphis already has added 3 players via the portal. So I don't know if that would make sense. The other one that stands out, it's just worth noting. We'll see. You know who the head coach was that recruited Arterio Morris to Texas? He is a guy that has a lot of playing time available right now. That is Chris Beard, who, believe it or not, he is at Ole Miss. It's funny, right? When I'm doing all these lists and, this school reached out to this kid and that school reached out to that kid. It's funny because you see Ole Miss and you don't really it doesn't really register. Oh, that's Chris Beard that is coaching Ole Miss. So that's just a thought. Again, nothing super inside information, just one name that jumped out to me, a couple schools that jumped out to me for Arterio Morris. One other player who entered the portal late Sunday into Monday, Musa Cisse, led the Big 12 in blocks each of the last 2 years at Oklahoma State. Another player who actually began his career at Memphis with Penny Hardaway. He will now enter the portal, and we will see where he lands. Now, in terms of commitments, I want to circle back to a guy and a school that I just talked about. That's Ole Miss, where Chris Beard is the head coach. And listen, we did the whole spiel on Chris Beard. Should he be the head coach? Should he not be the head coach? Should he be allowed to coach again? Whatever. At this point, it's time to put that conversation aside. If you want to have that conversation in your circles, you're welcome to do so. But from my perspective, I can agree, I can disagree, but I bring it up to say he is the head coach at Ole Miss. And it just strikes me, like, 2 things have struck me over the spring. One, hadn't felt like he made his first big move yet, but you knew something was coming at some point And that's exactly what happened on Monday when Chris Beard got a commitment from a really good player, Brandon Murray, 6'6" wing, who played at Georgetown. Now, what's interesting about Brandon Murray is a couple things. One, poor kid can't catch a break. Starts his career at LSU. Will Wade gets fired. He decides to transfer. Transfers. He's from Baltimore originally. Transfers to Georgetown. Averages 14 points per game this year. And then Patrick Ewing gets fired. And so this will be an interesting case study because the NCAA claims that this offseason they will be coming down on multiple time transfers and that they are not going to let guys just keep transferring 2, 3, 4 times over the course of their careers. So if you're not a grad transfer, they're saying that they're going to stop you at the one-time transfer. Now, personally, I'll believe it when I see it, but Brandon Murray is certainly an interesting test case. Now, my personal opinion, I think if your coach gets fired, you should let a guy transfer. If your coach that recruits you leaves, you should be allowed to transfer because we can pretend that you're not going to a college to play for a coach, but you are. And so I just bring it up to say, I think Brandon Murray should be eligible. It'll be fascinating to see. Same time, first big piece for Chris Beard. He did retain a couple recruits from the previous regime. And the other big piece was that their best player, Jamin Brakefield, actually recommitted to Chris Beard a few weeks ago. He was probably Ole Miss's best player. And I'll just tell you, man, it really does strike me like Chris Beard is now in the SEC. Now, we knew he was coming with Texas in a few years, but it just strikes me how tough this league is. Think about the coaches in this league. Bruce Pearl, John Calipari, Eric Musselman, Nate Oates, some of the guys that came in this year. Dennis Gates was phenomenal. Now you're adding Chris Beard to this league. There's a bunch of sharks swimming through. Chris Beard is the latest. He gets his first big commit with Brandon Murray. Speaking of Brandon Murray came from Georgetown. I thought it was a great weekend for Ed Cooley at Georgetown. 3 commits for Ed Cooley at Georgetown. First one, Jaden Epps, guard from Illinois. Well, I thought he was actually a very good player this year for Illinois as a freshman, averaged about 9.5 points per game. Decides to enter the portal. He had actually been committed to Ed Cooley at Providence at one point in his high school career, so it makes sense that he's going to Georgetown. Georgetown also added Dontrez Styles, former 4-star recruit who played 2 years at North Carolina, added Rowan Brumbaugh, a former 4-star recruit who redshirted this year at Texas. So in the course of about 36 hours, Ed Cooley adds 3 guys that I believe will be able to play right away in the Big East. Now listen, the Big East is a bear. UConn's there. Creighton, even without Ryan Nembhard, is going to be really good. Whatever. Marquette returns everybody. Rick Pitino hasn't gotten his first big commit yet, but you know he's going to at some point. So I just bring it up to say, this is far from a finished process for Ed Cooley at Georgetown, but at the same time, you need dudes, you need guys. Jaden Epps is a guy that I believe can contribute right away at the Big East level. Same with Dontrez Styles, same with Rowan Brumbaugh. Speaking of the Big East, there was one name I purposely left out that I need to include right now, because I'll tell you this. Sean Miller's a dog on the recruiting trail, okay? And if you think that Sean Miller, second chance at Xavier, you don't think he's going full speed ahead despite making the Sweet 16 this year, think again. This is a guy that is a million miles an hour, an elite recruiter, has always been an elite recruiter. And on Monday, he picked up a very important piece for next year. Remember, Xavier's going to lose Sule Boom, their star guard from this year who transferred in, and they're going to lose Colby Jones, who was part of the program last year. And so I bring it up because they picked up a very nice piece in the portal in Davion McKnight. Davion McKnight was the leading scorer at Western Kentucky this year. Really talented guard, about 6'4", puts the ball on the floor, pretty good shooter, etc. And Xavier, I'll say this, like I did my way too early top 25. Xavier was a team that I left out. I think Sean Miller is going to have a top 25 caliber team by the time the season tips off next year. Finally, last commit from Monday. I did a separate video on this one, so I didn't feel the need to like go over the top on this commitment. But Khalel Ware to Indiana with my boy Mike F. and Woodson. This, folks, is a big one, okay? Former top 10 recruit in the country, was a projected NBA lottery pick before the season, And it just didn't work out at Oregon. And I'm not going to sit here and say he's a perfect recruit and all that good stuff. Motor has been an issue for a while with him. But I also bring it up to say, if Mike Woodson can unlock it, I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this is the most talented recruit that Mike Woodson has ever signed. And yes, I am including in that mix Jalen Hood-Schifino, who's going to be a top 15 pick in this NBA draft. Khalel Ware is a beast. 7'1", super athletic, can shoot the three, put the ball on the floor. And really, again, I encourage you to go watch the full video that I already did. But just a guy that, like, I mean, he can be whatever he wants to be. He can be an All-American in Indiana. He can play his way into the top 10 of next year's NBA draft. He could be the Big Ten Player of the Year. I truly believe that. Will he be? I don't know. But he can be. And I give Mike Woodson credit, and I talked about it in this video, in the full video. Listen, there were some big boys that wanted him. Arkansas, he's from Arkansas, Khalel Ware, wanted him. Nate Oates, #1 seed in last NCAA tournament, wanted him for a visit. Couldn't get him on campus for a visit because Mike Woodson closed. So credit to Mike Woodson. A crazy day in the portal. I think the big news you need to know, the Harrison Ingram thing is fascinating. Brandon Murray is going to be a really good player. I'll be honest, I hope he's eligible next year. I want to see him on the court. I want to see Chris Beard full speed ahead at Ole Miss. The Khalel Ware news is huge as well. And again, Sean Miller, Davion McKnight, Xavier, baby. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor. Make sure to subscribe to this Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. As I said, I think we'll probably just start doing daily portal updates. You guys and girls love them. So make sure to subscribe. And if you're not downloading full episodes of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, make sure to do so. New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.